In the astrology of this weekend, December 23rd and 24th, we have some really interesting energy starting with the moon in a trine to Pluto. And so this is basically the grounded earth intuition. We've been hearing a lot, especially with some of these recent transits, about the prophecies, the deep prophetic energy of what's to come, the nebulous shifts and where it is we feel we're supposed to go, the feeling of destiny. The thing about the trine between the moon and Pluto is that intuition becomes incredibly grounded. It becomes, I almost want to say, more credible in its manifestation, or more realistic in the way that it's illustrating itself to you or communicating to you. So one of the things you might notice is that your intuition is much less colorful, but it's a lot more tangible. It's a lot more literal, and it might be a lot shorter and to the point. And while this is happening, we of course have the sun in Capricorn in a sextile with Saturn in Pisces. Saturn, of course, now being direct. So there is an interesting energy of the sun sextile Saturn, where some of the challenges, the intensities, the mountains that we're climbing essentially stabilize. It doesn't mean that we're done climbing the mountain. It just means that we've reached a certain level point on the mountain where we can actually set up a campsite. We can take a rest for a second, but not too long, because the thing about the sextile aspect itself is that we'll always have the chance to take a 3 or maybe even 4-day weekend, metaphorically. And sometimes we are called, when we have the opportunity, to take as much time off as we want, or maybe to take the whole 4-day weekend. But sometimes it's best to take the 2 days off, maybe even the third, but to do something above and beyond. Because what happens, of course, after the sextile is the quintile. What happens after that is the binovile. And what's coming up in the distance is, of course, the square. And so if we take time to go above and beyond when we don't have to, which, I mean, the Sun and Saturn sextile specifically is the epitome of doing something you don't have to do, but if you do it, it's going to help basically the rest of the climb of the mountain. Maybe, for example, while you're setting up this metaphorical campsite and taking a moment to rest, you also reorganize your backpack. You reorganize your supplies, because you know that you don't have to. You could just rest the max amount of time that it's available before the weather changes. But if you take a little bit of extra time to do something ahead of time, it's going to make the rest of this climb so much easier, and you're going to feel so much more prepared. And a lot of the times the sextile is a opportunity to relax, while at the same time a secret challenge of maturity. And it asks if you're going to do something that you don't have to do because you know it's the right thing to do. So for Capricorn, this is going to be, this essentially happening in your first house is going to be kind of interesting, because you don't necessarily need to bring up certain issues or bring up certain things you've wanted to say for a while, because you know that they're going to cause certain inconveniences, especially with people who might have the direct keys to what it is that you want. And you know that bringing up some of these issues based on your conscience is going to create problems that you didn't have to create. But if you're willing to do that, if you're willing to bring something up because you know it's the right thing to do, and to express this, now is a really good time to do that. For Sagittarius, this might be a moment to focus on some of your short-term financial goals and say, well, I don't need to open up a savings account. I don't need to check my credit score right now. I don't have to. But it probably would be a good idea for me to get some of these things out of the way. Now is a really good time to do that. Even if it's to a small degree, just something to show that you put in a little bit more above and beyond when you didn't technically have to. For Scorpio, of course, this happening is your third house. This is a time where it's like, you don't necessarily need to get a bunch of little things figured out in the near future. You don't need to manage each and every detail or set every single thing up. But if you do take a moment to make the checklist and to, at the very least, organize your thoughts before you've actually even communicated anything, you will be very happy you did in a very short amount of time from now. For Libra, you don't have to focus on, reconnecting with everyone in your family right now. You don't have to focus on trying to get, basically in contact with everyone. But at the same time, if you do that, if you sort of take a moment and just kind of check in on the people closest to you, whether it be your blood family or the secondary family you've chosen. It's going to be very helpful for other people right now, for what it is that they're going through, because they might be going through some pretty intense stuff that you just don't even have access to or know about at this time. For Virgo, of course, this is happening in your 5th, so it's not like you need to spice up everything in your life right now. You don't need to get 1,000 things figured out that you want to do, or to necessarily try and almost go from being in a state of total flat mundanity to suddenly having an extreme spicy situation. Like you don't need to sign up for salsa lessons and go on a hike and get these art supplies and do all these different things all on the same day, but do a little bit of something that is just going to take you out of your schedule a little bit in a positive way, that will take you out of the norm, so that you can sort of find what it is that you're feeling right now, because it's going to be a little bit hard to explain. For Leo, this is happening in your 6th house, so it's like you don't necessarily need to, once again, do every single thing that you feel you need to do in order to positively modify your schedule and to modify your life. Like, you don't have to make all of the changes in one day. It's kind of almost like the joke of, like you need more vitamin A in your life, and so you take an entire bottle of vitamin A pills to like catch up for lost time. You don't need to do that, but do a little something that starts a trend in your short term and in your long term that is going to set you up for a really good time later. And for Cancer, of course, this being in your 7th house, you don't need to fix your entire relationship right now, but it would be great to address at the very least the thing that you most want to bring to the surface, whether it be an issue that has not been communicated, or an issue that has been, but it's been communicated very ineffectively. And for Gemini, of course, this happening in your 8th, you don't necessarily need to figure out what all of these strange signs and symbols mean, but focus on one. Take a moment of meditation, which can be very hard to do for your sign, but take a moment of true stillness and meditation and give one of those things some real time and appreciation, and see if the message that has been sent to you is actually incredibly important. For Taurus, of course, this happening in your 9th, you don't need to break every single record you can imagine, achieve every single thing, focus on exposing yourself to every fear you have, but find one fear that you can counter and show a little bit of progress. And let's say, for example, it was arachnophobia. You don't need to just hang out at a pet store and just be palling around with spiders all day, but at the same time, it would be really good to take that very first step. Maybe step into the pet store at all and just see the spiders on the shelf in the distance and say, I'm staying over here, but I'm in the same place, and I'm going to take some time until I'm comfortable with this. And maybe next week I'll walk 10 feet closer and go through the same exercise. Just slow exposure therapy. But it's not always about fear, but it's like exposing yourself to things that your belief right now is essentially locking down and saying, nope, can't do that. Physically impossible. There's no way. And so finding a way to break some of those barriers. Of course, for Aries, that's happening in your 10th, you don't need to map out the next 10 years of your life accurately. The ability to even do that is almost silly. There's certain things that you can do, certain parts of your plan that you can map out. But take the time to find one thing, just one thing where you're like, one thing I've always wanted is to set aside time so I can fix up a classic car. And so you'll say, getting the classic car, you'll make a whole plan of how in 6 years from now you'll have it. And maybe wouldn't even necessarily take that long. Maybe it'll just be like a few months before you can get it. But by making the 6-year plan, you're essentially showing yourself, like, at the very least, this is what I can achieve or live up to or become. And then, of course, for Pisces, this is happening in your 11th right now. And so this is, it's like, you don't need to reconnect with every single friend that you've had a falling out with that you wish you hadn't. But one text or call to one person, or even if possible, like one in-person meeting, would be just a really amazing thing for you to experience that reconnection, because this is a big thing for Pisces right now, is the reconnection with previous friendships. And then of course Aquarius, lastly, this is your 12th house. So this is a big moment for you where you're like, it's like you don't need to put every single toxic relationship to an end. You don't need to try and heal every trauma you have, but look at one thing directly from your past that you are willing to put into the metaphorical graveyard, and put up its gravestone and lay flowers in front of it, and find the willingness to say goodbye to one thing that has been haunting you for a while. So anyways, I hope that this has helped. This is a very intense weekend, but I hope you guys find your thing, and let me know about it in the comments below. And anyways, I hope you guys have a great weekend. I will talk to you all on Monday.